Today, we're going to talk about a book by an author I had been meaning to read for quite some time. The author is Frederick Backman, and I didn't know where to start with his books because he has so many and seems to be quite popular. So it was recommended that I start with My Grandmother Told Me to Tell You She's Sorry. What a firecracker whirlwind of a little book. So it's, I guess you would say, kind of magical realism, and it follows the story of this 7-year-old Elsa. And her granny to her is a superhero. And she's also like a crackpot and kind of slightly crazy. But throughout Granny's life, she had been a doctor and she saved multiple people. They all live in like this apartment building where Elsa lives next door with her mom. And then Granny is next door in another apartment. And then Elsa's parents are divorced. And when that happened, Granny was really like a lifeline for her. And so every night she would sneak out of the apartment and go over to Granny's. And her and Granny would get in the wardrobe and they would go to the land of Almost Awake to this place called Miama's. And Granny would tell her all these fairy tales. And they would go there on these cloud animals and have all these adventures. And to her, it seemed very real. And Granny had all these stories and all these fairy tales. And then one day, Granny passes away. And she gives Elsa one last adventure. She gives her this letter and she's like, I need you to deliver this for me for a great adventure. And she hopes that she doesn't hate her after this. And so in this apartment building complex where she lives, there's all these very strange, interesting characters. There's this one guy they call the Monster, who's like this really tall, huge guy that no one really sees or talks to much. There's this other lady who wears this really straight black skirt. Every night she gets absolutely wasted and runs around by the stairs with her shoehorn yelling at things until she breaks down and starts singing the song and then finally goes back in and goes to bed. There is another apartment that there's this dog that is constantly just barking and barking and barking. And then there's this other woman, Britt Marie, who's just this busybody, most annoying Karen as any Karen could be. And so you have all these people and you're like, ugh, they're all awful. But they're also tied into Granny's fairy tales, because the first letter that she asks for Elsa to deliver is to this guy that's the Monster. Oh, but she also asks for her to drop off some sweets at some point for their friend. And their friend is apparently the dog that's always losing its dang mind. Elsa starts to get to know the people that live in the apartment building, and you start to get into their backstories, and it's sad and emotional and sweet and heartfelt. The story was so good and it was so quirky and funny. Like, you get the stories about Granny, and Granny would be like up on her balcony shooting paintball guns at like men trying to come over and talk to her about Jesus. One of the last times her and Elsa were together, they went and she broke into the zoo and ended up throwing poop at a police officer. Not Elsa, the grandma. Grandma's like 77, slightly off her rocker. And just a in-your-face, vibrant, vivacious, insane, but also sane at the same time grandma. And she was quite magical and quite fiercely protective of Elsa. And Elsa also at her school is bullied. And the children are completely awful to her and chase her around and hit her and scratch her. And she's always coming home with bruises and whatnot, and her parents are kind of milquetoast about it, but her grandma like gets in people's faces and like basically has kind of protected her all this time. So like without her grandma gone, like her mom works in a hospital, she's gone all the time, her dad's married to someone else, this woman Lysette, I think is her name. Elsa's stepdad George, he's a good dude, everyone seems to love him, but she's 7 and parents divorced, stuff's weird, so she doesn't really want to like George that much, even though she knows everybody likes him. After the grandmother passes, you see how Elsa deals with the death of the grandma, but she also starts taking these letters to people, and then she asks them what's in the letters and what did the grandmother say. And all these people, and a creature too, because there's a creature in it that is called the Worse. Not really sure if it was a dog. I don't think it was a dog. Maybe it was a dog. Could have been a dog, but she was feeding it sweets and chocolates and stuff. If it was a real dog, it would have died. So maybe it was a magical creature from this other land. Anyway, she starts to get to know all these people that were kind of scary, and she asks them these like abrasive questions that the other adults are too afraid to ask. Like, as you get into the Monster story, you learn that he was in the war, is haunted by that. He also has OCD and is a germaphobe, so that's why no one sees him a whole lot, because he's got to constantly like keep his hands clean and all this. And like, Granny apologizes for all these different things, and then Elsa starts to see that these are the people in the fairy tales that Granny had talked about. And Granny had brought a lot of these people back to live in the apartments near them to try and help. And you find like the story of the drunk woman and how her husband and her 2 sons had died in the tsunami, and that she just kind of has been lost and floating ever since. And you get her backstory, and then Elsa kind of like helps these people along the way and like makes them face things that they have been trying to not face for a long time. And it's such a beautiful little book. I'm super curious to read more about this author. I love the writing. It was funny, it was heartfelt. There was like 3 different times I cried at the end. It's very emotional. And characters that in the beginning you're like, God, they're awful, I hate them. Then you develop empathy for them because you find out about their situation and why they are the way they are. Like in the beginning, obviously, I hated Britt Marie. I was like, she's an effing Karen and she's awful. Someone should punch her in her face. But then you learn what's going on in the background because you never know, right? Like you never know what's going on in someone's life. And so what does it really hurt you to be kind to someone, even if they're, I mean, not being an evil person, they're just being a nitpicky, know-it-all busybody, you know, like you never know. So that's one of those things that comes across in this. Great book to start with. So thank you to the person who recommended it to me. I cannot remember who it was. It was over on TikTok. I don't even remember what I was talking about or which video it was, so I don't know which one to go back and look for the comment. But thank you, if the person who recommended this, if you see this, thank you. And I definitely look forward to reading more of Frederick Backman's books. I don't know if they all have this kind of like almost magical edge fairy tale element to them. No idea. Like I'm not familiar with other stuff he read, so we shall see in the future. If you have any favorite Frederick Backman books, please let me know what your favorites are, because I want to figure out what I want to read of his next. The pacing was good. The writing was excellent. I really liked the humor in it. And it was a nice balance of humor. And then it's very, like I said, very emotional, sad, but also sweet and bittersweet at the same time, and hopeful. If any of that sounds good to you, definitely check out the mouthful of a title of a book that is My Grandmother Told Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Frederick Backman. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.